In today's fight news, all 26 fighters for the upcoming UFC 300 card have officially made weight. The former featherweight king, Max Holloway, tells UFC on TNT that although he's moving up in weight, he still had to cut about 10 pounds the night before the weigh-ins. He thinks he's going to weigh about 170 pounds on the actual fight night. It's official. Former PFL lightweight champion Kayla Harrison has officially made the women's bantamweight limit of 136. Harrison's coach, Mike Brown, recently spoke with New England Fights and had this to say about her drastic weight cut to the bantamweight division. You don't think of her as being smaller because she looks so muscular and jacked, right? But often these girls were bigger and heavier than her in the PFL. They were tall, thick, big legs, just big girls, and she was cutting virtually nothing. Harrison made a bet with coach Mike Brown, saying that if she gets a first-round finish over Holly Holm at UFC 300, she gets to slap him power slap style. Ahead of his title eliminator at UFC 300 against former champion Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan had this to say to AG Fight about his opponent. Charles is not a famous jiu-jitsu guy. He's an MMA fighter. He never compete like high-level jiu-jitsu. He's just good in MMA. If he's gonna compete in jiu-jitsu, I know everybody gonna beat him in the higher level. Ahead of this weekend's historic UFC 300 card, former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya said that he had been training for 4 weeks in preparation to take on current middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis as the main event for UFC 300. Izzy said he didn't know that he wasn't going to be on the card as the main event until 3 minutes before Dana White officially announced Pereira and Hill as the main event, due to DDP declining the fight. Speaking of the former champ Adesanya, while on an episode of the MMA Hour, he named the top 3 fighters he wants to take on before he retires, in this order: Dricus du Plessis, Khamzat Chimaev, and a rematch with Sean Strickland. This is what Adesanya had to say. If Khamzat beats Rob, I want to test that. I'm going to get Strickland again, and Dricus is a given. During the UFC 300 presser, UFC President Dana White was asked about rumors that there's going to be a big announcement at the UFC 300 event, in which he replied, "It's all BS, like NBC," in reference to NBC News saying that heavyweight champion John Jones had been quote-unquote arrested when he hadn't. White also shot down rumors that a fight between the notorious Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler was going to be announced at UFC 300. He did say that he hopes to put that card on UFC 303. According to the former champ McGregor, he posted on X, "The fight is on, McGregor versus Chandler. See you on the day I said," inferring that the UFC 303 is his. In other news, at the UFC press event, brand new UFC gloves were introduced. But they will not be used at the upcoming UFC 300, but instead UFC 302, in order to give the fighters some time to get used to wearing them in training. There will be a series of 4 different colors for the UFC gloves. According to Oscar Willis, this will be the setup: blue, Contender Series; red, Road to the UFC; black, regular fights; and gold, championship fights. During the breakdowns of the new gloves, it was said that there was a reduction in eye pokes when they were used for the Dana White Contender Series Season 7. In other fight news, today was the first leg of the Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal multi-city tour. And here is your first face-off. During the press conference, Jorge Masvidal trashed quote-unquote diva Nate Diaz for his long list of demands in order to make the boxing match happen, stating, he said he wouldn't fight unless he walked out second, non-negotiable. Diaz also had a few things to say about Masvidal, stating, "I want to fight him in MMA, but this is the only thing he's allowed to do, So I'm going to try and beat his ass the best way I can in this, and we'll go from there. Diaz also said that a trilogy with the notorious Conor McGregor is quote-unquote 100% gonna happen, and he's hoping it's at UFC 306 at the Sphere. At PhotoAmy33 posted this on X. We have a picture of featherweight king Ilia Topuria sitting front row at Power Slap number 7. Amy Kaplan also posted a picture of interim heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall sitting front row as well at the event. On the MMA Hour, lightweight Dan Hooker says that the UFC has him set to fight Benoit Saint Denis this September, but he says he'd also like to get a fight in before that. Hooker says he'd like to be on the UFC 303 card on June 29th against Mateusz Gamrot. The lightweight standout Hooker tells Ariel Helwani that he still has title aspirations, stating, "I just won it, just that once. I don't care what happens after that. For the rest of days, if I could, just go to sleep with that belt one night." As we reported on yesterday's episode, UFC welterweight top 5 contender Belal Muhammad made a tweet on X calling out the champion Leon Edwards, stating, "Leon, his manager, his coach, his brother, all beaches." Well, the champion clapped back, stating, "All 4 of these men would beat you in a fight, LOL bum." It looks like UFC standout Joaquin Buckley is getting in on the action, taking shots at the champ Leon Edwards. According to Mike Bond, flyers have been found all over the parking lot. It looks like Buckley is trying to shoot his shot for a title shot as well. And lastly, we end with the rapper Drake putting $675,000 on the light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira to beat Jamal Hill at UFC 300. If you know anything about Drake's betting history, this isn't looking too good for Pereira. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe.